Hi everyone. So we'll start with the panel on DeFi. So I'll let you introduce yourself and.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? I suppose yes. So welcome again to the discussion panel. The title is DeFi Uncomplicated, and what we're going to talk about is what value does DeFi offer to an average user, and what can we do to make this DeFi even more usable. My name is Bartek Rutkowski. I'm going to be your host, and these are my fabulous guests, Alessandro, Johannes, and Connor. Welcome them with a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so before we get into it, let's start with a round of introductions. Guys, please tell us a little about yourself. What are you doing in the space? What's your background? What makes you an expert?
I think there's no experts in crypto, right? It's so new in a way, but anyways, I'm Alessandro, founder of Brahma.fi. So what we're working on currently, it's we're building like a custody and execution environment using Safe for asset management. So think of like a Fireblocks, but built with smart contract wallets instead of MPC technology. So things like transaction policies, automation, team accesses to use DeFi. And before this, we were a prop trading firm in centralized crypto. So we used to trade on centralized exchanges. And then we fully transitioned to working on essentially on-chain liquidity. And this is how we got here.
Great direction.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Johannes. I'm one of the founders of Nerve Network. What we're basically doing is we're trying to make Web3 suck a bit less. And we do that by building automation. So what you can do with Nerve as a developer is building or just automating all those backend processes, be it for DeFi, be it for what we call a volume-driven world, GameFi, social media, and so on. So you can really focus on what matters for you, which is building your product, building your business logic, and also building a really good user experience and user interface. From a background, I kind of talk about DeFi as well. Is I spent a couple of years of my career building or helping to set up an asset manager, investment manager in the Web3 space. So I know kind of the world from both sides. As an investor, as an institutional kind of style of investor, but also as a founder being very much in the weeds of building and implementing, decentralized application, what it means to struggle with the technical limitation blockchain gives us to this day.
Awesome.
I agree. There's no experts in blockchain. So I'm Connor, the founder of Enso Finance. For those who don't know, we are a unified API to interact with all DeFi primitives. So if you want to embed, let's say, lending, farming, borrowing, swapping, whatever it may be, natively within your application, you can just plug in our API to do this. We are a solver for CowSwap as well, and we're going to be a solver for many other platforms.
Awesome. So now, as we know our guests a little more, we can start off with a first question. And before we jump into how we can make DeFi better, let's start with why. Why do we want to make DeFi better? So let's start with outlining some of the key features that you have in mind that make DeFi compelling to users in comparison with fintech applications or traditional finance applications or products that they offer. Why DeFi makes sense for the users, in your opinion?
It's open, permissionless. You don't have any barriers. Anyone can interact with this ecosystem the way they would like. Nobody can tell you what you can and cannot do. For me, that's kind of the core purpose. To get more people to use DeFi, we need to have better aggregation tools, and we also need to have better user experience. Right now, if you want to interact with, let's say, a Beefy Vault, very basic DeFi interaction, you need to go to 4 different interfaces and do 8 different transactions. So ultimately, if we want more normies to interact with a space, we need to create better user experience.
I would go a step further and kind of differentiate here a bit, right? We have to be very clear that I'm Swiss, and probably in Switzerland, the penetration of having a bank account is 99.9% or something. So we, like most of those tools or DeFi primitives which are relevant for the end user. I mean, you're not, leverage trading. I don't necessarily see that as necessary for the average retail user. we have a bank account. I can do payment. I can use this thing called Twint in Switzerland, which doesn't really work properly, but it's there. It's free to make transactions. At the same time, we have probably about 2/3 of the world population which does not have access to this kind of banking system. It doesn't have an account. So we need to make, and that's where DeFi is a really, really, really big chance, where they can suddenly basically be on the same terms, no matter if you live in Burundi or in Switzerland, right? You can have the same quality of financial services, have that access. And that's where really DeFi can have a huge impact. But in order to actually leverage that, we need to make it accessible. So we need to have a user experience and a user interface which is easy to use, where, as you very rightly put, so we don't have to use 4 different interfaces. I can very easily get my hard-earned money on this somehow without, that's where stablecoins come in, having to fear that I have a 200% annualized volatility and I don't actually have any idea how much my money is going to be worth tomorrow or if it's going to be rock pulled. Just having like more stability, in a sense, making it more boring, but just kind of to work. Very simple, but work and work forever and work very, very cheaply. And I think the project, the combination of tools which can pull that off and which can penetrate those markets and be on par from a UX perspective with something like a Revolut is gonna, reign the world.
I agree and disagree with some parts, but generally speaking, like cross-border can only be enabled by crypto. Clearly, like otherwise you have to use something like Swift or like some like really Web2 standard with people in Excel. But for example, does anybody know what UPI is? UPI in India? Great. Okay, that's good that nobody knows. That's cool. So UPI is like a payment network that the government of India established with all the banks. So all the banks by default have to be integrated. And you can basically have a QR code that you spin up with a phone and internet connection, and you have 24/7 instant payments, no fees, and you can offload it to any bank account whenever you'll have a bank account. So like part of my team in India, when I go there, you want to buy a smoothie on the road, literally like a food truck stall with, $1 vegetable cart. They have a UPI code, and then you will just pay like that. A bit like in China with WeChat. So that is already possible with government rails, but it's only applicable to India. So if like Switzerland wants to integrate to make it cross-border, there's no way, they would have to create a consortium. So this is what crypto can solve. The cross-border part of it, I agree. The actual payment unbanked infrastructure, country by country, is already solved. Like UPC has 90% penetration in India, meaning 90% of people with a mobile use that. So that's like a lot of people, like almost 1 billion people.
That's India, right?
India or Russia also has a similar system. But cross-border, no, I agree. For me, it's composability. So like if I develop an app, in fintech, there are like unicorns that were born only to connect banking APIs like Plaid, because the standards are so old and so bad. And in crypto, anybody could integrate with Enzo and Nerif and Brahma at the same time. So we just lack the regulation in a way to allow Web2 parties to integrate us into their stack. I think like Revolut to use Enzo, they wouldn't until there's some sort of regulatory framework that tells them they're not breaking the law.
Good example. So Revolut pulled it off. I think it's been live a couple of months now, but you basically you can withdraw, I think it's been free, and to any wallet.
Like a...
Yes.
Ah, okay.
And the other way around as well.
I saw Beam. You saw Beam? Beam is like a payment app in crypto, Beam Echo. So they use MasterCard Direct, where whenever you receive a deposit to Beam in crypto, like Connor sent me some ETH, automatically gets off-ramped instantly to my bank account or debit card. But this is like, you have to adhere to MasterCard rules and obviously, right? Like
so I think there is already a lot of regulation. So I worked in like Signa Bank and I created like the cold storage, hot storage. And if those who aren't aware, it's basically a fully licensed and regulated crypto bank. So there is regulations already here in certain jurisdictions, in particular Switzerland. Now, for these regulated entities to interact with DeFi, since it is a fully permissionless system, is a whole other ballgame. Because then it's seen as mixing, it's seen as money laundering, because you cannot identify the counterparty. And a banking
that's why I'm so impressed with Revolut.
Yeah.
Because it's like, even with a big provider like Bitcoin Swiss, you have to, in a sense, make proof of ownership of a wallet to withdraw to. You don't have to do it with Revolut. I can literally withdraw to any wallet.
But you can withdraw because you're already KYC'd. You cannot send money from a crypto wallet to Revolut.
You can.
Oh, sorry, we went off track.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm gonna chime in. No, that was very interesting. So kind of we went with the flow, but like the outcome, like from this question, what I'm hearing is that like DeFi makes sense, and even there are some communities around the world that seem like to be in desperate need of DeFi. So like what are like regulations were meant already, but what are the pieces of infrastructure or whatever else that are missing or are blocking us from like seeing DeFi being the kind of default way to interact financially with each other?
If I would have to mention one thing, I would say on-ramps. Like cheap on-ramps which are available basically everywhere. Once again, we don't have the problem in Switzerland, but I think I don't really market that well. But for example, in Latin America, every country has its own on-ramp, which is like a 4 or 5% fees to get crypto, and it's like super slow. So that's, if you ask me, I would say on-ramp.
On-ramp, okay.
Not sure what you guys think.
Yeah.
I think on-ramp and like ease of use for wallets. So like passkey wallets, if you tried one recently, like Alembic did a demo that is really cool. I saw it at FCC. So it's demo.alembic.tech, and you can basically from your device, you just use your Face ID or your fingerprint scanner on your Mac, and that establishes a wallet and instantly can do a transaction without any gas, any private key storage because it's on device. So we also, like my team hacked something at FCC for generating a safe, creating a safe from fingerprint and then doing a swap on 1 inch. So this kind of like instant like on-ramp without friction for a private key, like people don't want to store private keys. I mean, I tried literally with friends like, oh, set up a wallet, set up a ledger, and people are just like, oh, I'm going to lose it. And then they end up using maybe Argent and Rainbow, which is already good, right? Social recovery and some level of abstraction. So I think abstraction and then on-ramp is like what I mentioned with Beam or Wholly Held, like these payment apps with cards that make it really easy to, to get into and out of crypto. Mostly out of crypto is the problem usually. Into is easier.
I agree with all the points. I would just abstract all of DeFi away. People don't even need to know that there's blockchain underneath. They just need to know what the benefit is. So if I can put my funds here and I can generate these rewards, or I can even borrow funds, whereas before I would need to go to a bank and so forth. So just abstract all of this away and just make it extremely simple for people to get part of this ecosystem.
Awesome. So I see like two main points. One is on-ramping. On-ramping seems to be like a very complicated thing and very closely related to the regulatory environment, and that's probably kind of slow, and not only in the hands of builders, but user-friendliness, I guess, is something that we could work on. So I wanted to ask you, what are, in your opinion, the most promising developments that will make the interfaces more user-friendly? And I will here ask especially about the things that account abstraction might enable. That you already touched base on that, but I'm wondering like if this is gonna allow some sort of a breakthrough, or is this just like a small step forward, one of many, and we'll need many more? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I have to plug narrative here, obviously, right? No, but it's no, it is a part. I would say it's more a evolution and a revolution. It's a very much needed spot to kind of make programmable wallets, if you will, right? Which enables stuff as just mentioned, social recovery and so on. It is. I don't think account abstraction for the mass user adoption. I mean, the same with narrative, like automation. Also, not. It's not a silver bullet. It is. It has to be a package which is in total so compelling that it basically gets that growth flywheel going. So it's definitely an important part for me. I think it's very exciting to be able to very easily use something like Safe and kind of the surrounding toolings. But that is once again, where we have to be careful that we're not getting too excited about technical stuff because we're building it. Because for the end user, that is completely irrelevant. As you said very rightly, it's in the end, it has to be a seamless experience, and the user doesn't even have to know that there is like blockchain underneath. So account abstraction doesn't say anything to, you know, this is the end user. That's something we're excited about, and which is an important part. But as I said, I don't think it's a silver bullet.
I personally like smart accounts quite a lot. Just use Safe. Don't build your own smart contract wallet. It creates a lot more fragmentation in the ecosystem. Just stick to that and then start plugging all these different tools on top. For me personally, I think account abstraction is nice to have things standardized. I think it's been overhyped quite a lot. In particular, smart accounts already existed. Bundlers and relayers, also known as Open Zeppelin GSN, which has been around for 6 years. Then kind of multi-call or bundling transactions together also has its limitations, right? You can't use the output of the first queue transaction into the next one and so forth, so there are some limitations. So generally on the technological side, I would say smart accounts for sure, to abstract this private key infrastructure and so forth away, and then having very seamless user experience on top, and also relaying and paying transactions on other people's behalf. So I think kind of this as a foundational layer, and then what are the use cases that go on top? So this is kind of the base layer of what we can start providing value to people. If you want to borrow or you want to avoid a bank account and so forth, you use this first. And I think the second part we haven't really figured out just yet.
Yeah, I mean, everything makes sense. I think definitely smart contract wallets, right? We're all building on smart contract wallets in a way. Like we chose smart contract wallets versus an EOA in an MPC because of the benefits, you know, multi-call, gas abstraction. Most importantly, I think like people that use any financial app, they have limits and policies that they can set easily, right? Like max amount that can go out of my wallet at any point in time, even if my account is phished somehow or I'm SIM swapped. And the other thing is, this is anecdotal, but when I talk to normie friends and I ask them if they use Google Auth or like a 2FA app like Authy, they're like, what is it? And I'm like, bro, it's like 2023. Yeah, like a lot of people still use SMS OTPs unless they are pushed and obliged to change. So we need like the lowest friction for like gas is horrible. Like Web2 people don't understand gas, and why would they, right? Like it's a fluctuating price currency that they have to send to a chain before they can do something there. So I think like you have to abstract away gas, which is possible with relayers already, and you need to allow people to set policies on their contract, on their smart contract wallets in a super easy way. Like when you onboard onto Revolut, and you actually can set like some limits and some specific assets you're gonna trade or protocols that you trust. And that is in a total Web2 UX style. And behind, there's a standardized transaction that gets triggered to impose a guard on your wallet.
Makes sense. I think the kind of Revolt direction is very natural and mentioned quite often in the space. Though I have a question, how far can it go? I mean, right, we have the private keys sort of protected by the social recovery, by maybe we can set a password, different set of policies. Maybe at the end of the day, we'll end up not having the private key at all. Like, is this something that you think is one of the ways that will attract more people, or does it go against the values of the Web3? Like, not your keys, not your coins. Like, is it really, you know, the song of today, or do we need to prepare that some users just don't want their keys and want only the password?
I mean, you need to give them what they want. You know, you can have your fundamental beliefs in life and you can stick to it and continue on that way, or we can be realistic and say, some people in this room like that, some people don't, and normie users don't want to care about their private key. And if we want more people to get in this industry, we need to give them what they need to take away our, let's say, philosophical beliefs to a certain regard. And if somebody in this room is not going to do that, somebody else is going to do it, right? And it will just propel this ecosystem even further.
I mean, there's a reason why there's banks, right? Banks, historically speaking, obviously now they're different business. They, historically speaking, a place where you could store your values. And I mean, technically, there will always be a private key. And the question is now, okay, who is holding that private key? Who is holding the baby? And this is a long-standing discussion I've had. You know, I personally believe here that banks will actually develop towards that. That, you know, they are regulated, transparent, trustworthy, because there's the legal framework, there's the social framework, which in the end up make up nation states, who will hold those private keys for you, where you go away from this, right now we have centralized exchanges, which are shady at best, right? You don't really know what is actually happening, so my thing is, the difference will be, right now I have to use banks if I want to access the financial system. In the future, I can choose to use them, but I also have the ability to do it myself if I choose to do so. So that's where I see that going. And then that, one basically answers the question of, will I have a private key? Not necessarily. And I have a system in place which is legally protected, which is in a society like adopted and kind of part of that whole societal control, if you will, which does that for me.
If I can add on to this is already happening in Switzerland. They've got like sub-custody. So all these HSMs, they're then licensing.
Technically, yes. Technically, yes.
But is it being used effectively so far? No.
And then maybe just for people who don't know that, like how this is being done in Switzerland, I'm saying technically yes, because yes, technically there's HSMs and they are basically holding your keys, but they are restricting you from doing whatever you want with your keys. You can only basically, get a certain.
They're going to start changing that. So
I hope so.
Yeah, they're going to have like sub-custody accounts, and then that will go to different companies. Then they manage that KYC, and then it shifts some liability away, and then normies can then start plugging into that as well.
Depends a lot what kind of user you are, like Connor said, but also like if we're talking as a DeFi panel and you want to do DeFi, your main vector of attack, like getting attacked, is not the private key, is usually what you sign. So I think there's a lot more work to be done on that regard, like understanding what you're signing, why, intents, like Rabi and some other companies are doing really well. Private key storage is like, there are people that have gold under their mattress, and there are people that actually store gold at banks historically, like Johannes was saying. So like, if you want the security in a way of a trusted regulated party, and if somebody comes at your home, you really have no access to the gold unless they bring you there with a gun, then you go for a storage solution, right? For any goods, like whatever your good is. And Bitcoin with Xapo in Switzerland in whatever, 2015, 16 was the main proposition. They were basically like a mountain storage with like vaults. That was how Xapo and the whole custody ecosystem started. So.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe there is a way to eat the cookie and have the cookie, because on one hand we want the security, but on the other we want the seamless experience. And before one of you mentioned the SMS verification with banks. Maybe there is something that we can do like that here that will still make you hold your keys, but do something that's better than nothing. It's better than not holding your keys, but far easier. Do you think that there is something like that?
Multi-sigs. Right, you can have a safe multi-sig and give one of the keys to your bank.
But also, like passkeys is exactly that in a way, like just storing your private key in your device, or even in a backup. Like look at how Rainbow has like iCloud backup. I don't know how many users use it, but you can choose. And then in a multi-sig, you need a smart contract wallet. Then you can set policies, and you can say anything above this amount. Like in a bank, they would call you and verify with you, are you getting scammed? And they do it for the stupidest reasons. I sent a $2,000 transfer to Amsterdam, like not to buy anything illicit. It was to pay an event at FCC that Maven organized. And they called me up and I said, it's 2,000 euros, it's SEPA transfer. And they're like, oh, it's a random check. So with a multi-sig, you can set a second, a third hot or like cold key with somebody else as well that you trust, and say only above a certain transaction value, I need a third signature, I need a fourth. And you store your primary key in your device, but nothing can happen if you put a time lock. I mean, nothing horrible can happen like compared to a normal wallet and just signing something with infinite approval and getting drained in one block. That cannot happen.
I think it really depends on the person's choice, which we're all saying, right? One thing of, let's say, storing your private key, I'm sure most of everyone's aware, LastPass got hacked, and many wallets where people were storing their private keys in LastPass haven't even said that they got exploited, but Taylor has already proven that it was LastPass and so forth. So giving people the choice is fundamental. You know, if somebody wants to go and drink 10 beers at this time of day, they can do that. You know, you don't take the choice away. So giving them the choice of having a smart account or doing an EOA, maybe having these different recovery methods, or using a normalized custodian. You know, a lot of foundations don't do self-custody. And I don't think many people talk about this, but the larger foundations store their money at crypto-regulated banks because they don't want all of this overhead of managing all of their keys. You know, they segregate their custody into, let's say, hot wallets, which might be multi-sigs or even EOAs. And then the larger funds, they're all depositing into these crypto banks inside of Switzerland. So just giving people the choices is fundamentally what will improve the ecosystem.
Awesome. So kind of one thing that comes to my mind, like ad hoc, do you think that there is going to be someone like, or actors like, kind of like tech support of blockchain? I mean, in a sense, because with all these institutions, there's someone, you know, to call and ask, hey, my whatever disappeared, my balance changed, why? There's someone to call that, hey, there's, you know, the big transaction going out of your wallet. I mean, some of these things can be automated, but at the end of the day, probably there needs to be a human input. Do you think that the community can develop or help grow actors that will guide very non-technical users into DeFi, or yeah?
I hope so.
And what generation do you want to target for that one? Because I think
TikTok support.
Right? I think each generation is very different. I think all of our generations, the younger and so forth, they're very self-able to do stuff. They will figure out themselves. They will try to understand. They will try to learn. The older generation, maybe not so much. And they need this. And the question is, should we shift our resources and time to accommodate to that generation or not?
But I think like support and education are two different things, right? You can club them together. So support, it's the provider that you interact with which gives you support, right? Like if something happens on the RPC level or on the EVM level, like a compiler issue, whatever we've seen, you will still talk to the Uniswap support at one point. You will not talk to like the Viper team or whoever else, for example. So, and when it comes to actual education, yes, you probably need like the Ethereum Foundation to actually do education towards normies, or make an education DAO where we all contribute a little bit and we start explaining the benefit. But so far, the value is all over the place. You have to first have a value that you want to align and convey. Like, again, UPI example, they conveyed that wherever you are with an internet access, you can receive and pay money 24/7. Crypto does exactly that, but we just didn't compile it into a solution that people can really use like out of the box no matter where they are. So,
I think, just add on to this, so I think a lot of crypto companies already, with their Discord, have server support, right? So it's kind of already there, but you need to understand that you need to go to the Discord first to then get that support. So maybe we need to go to the steps above there. But I think a lot of people are doing education, you know. For me personally, I think particular companies that try and create all of this educational pieces are actually losing focus of their core product. And they're turning into an educational platform. Maybe, like you said, if we go into like an educational DAO, then we can all contribute, but it allows us to self-focus on our area.
yeah, just like basic education. I agree, until we're ready with the value of...
But there is. You just Google. That's the thing.
Keep in mind here, we're once again talking about individual product. You know, I can go to the Discord of Uniswap. However, if we're talking about mass adoption, people will not use Uniswap. People will use some kind of user interface which has
Revolut,
Uniswap
which will have its own customer support.
Exactly. So once again, here I would say this is going to be a part of this package's business model, right? Where it actually already is moving away, right? The banks were free for everyone because they made so much money with their money, right? Because of the interest rate differences. And the money they were lending out. And this will move back into kind of a service type, which you see with Revolut right now, where you have kind of all the transactions are free, the foreign exchange is very free, but you pay a monthly service fee for that. And in that service fee, you have support included. So that's where I see it going, where if this unbundling, where in a sense it becomes, and that's actually, there's even a legal aspect to that. You have, I'm not a lawyer, maybe I'm telling like half truths now, but I think it's in MiCA 2, or in the MiFID 2, in the European regulation, where banks now have to basically separately charge for the research they do. So even on the legal side, this is kind of going towards that, where you have this unbundling, and it becomes very clear to an end client what is he paying for, and where does the money come from, and where is the money being made.
Yeah, guys, as we are arriving at the end of our time together, just one final question, and let's make it prompt. What are just single one, what is the single most thing that comes to your mind when you think about what will make DeFi better? What's the single most exciting thing in DeFi that will make it better? Tough one. Yeah,
I think what time frame? Just anything?
you can pick any time frame.
So I think that now, if you ask me a year back, like it was the start of like L2 chains and like this kind of development of ramification of how many chains are going to be there. Now with the OP stack and like Base and so many, we're seeing that this is like definitely a flourishing business model, right? Like sequencer, L2s, and now we're splitting liquidity into smaller and smaller blocks. So for DeFi to be efficient, you need liquidity. For DeFi to really be able to onboard even like, 5x the customers we have now, which is not a lot, and actively trade and efficiently earn yield, whatever, without slippage, you need liquidity. So I'm excited for anybody who's bringing back like some sanity to performing transaction in an efficient way across chains without a lot of the friction. But wallets play a lot into that, which is not DeFi. So, yeah.
Awesome.
It's a really hard question. I said that before. I don't think it's one thing. It's the.
Just the one you're most excited about.
Yeah,
of course.
It's like this success by many cuts. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where
which cut do you choose?
Yeah. Honestly,
it's tough.
It's very tough. I'll let you go first.
I can try maybe some controversy. Stop doing Ponzi's. Stop doing token incentivizations. Build real DeFi products. Lending and borrowing is useful.
Oh, yeah.
So stop the token incentivization bullshit. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't create good products.
But that's what people currently users want. Like perps are
but that's
who are the users?
Perps is a useful product.
I know, but perps have been incentivized for liquidity to go on perps. It's not like they just put some perp contracts and the volume came. There was incentives everywhere.
Yeah, but how many people, let's say you use Revolut, let's say you use any application, did you sign up for that because you would get free money given to you? No, you sign up.
You do.
Actually, yes.
You do.
Actually, yes.
You use Uber Eats because you get coupons, right?
Okay, well maybe you fucked up there, right?
Guys,
so maybe
we need to wrap up. Let's end with a sentence that everyone started using Revolut because of its functionality, not the rewards, and let's have DeFi the same way. Thank you very much.
100%. I have one more thing to say, though. I have a bit of alpha to share. We have a really cool side event tonight. I have a handful of spots to give away, tacos to give away. So if you want tacos, well, find me.
Yes, you can reach out to us after the panel.